In 1998, Marvel was a sinking ship. They were selling off their furniture just to keep the lights on. Then, a man in a leather trench coat walked into a meatpacking plant, turned a room full of vampires into spicy glitter, and effectively birthed the modern superhero era. Blade was a simple recipe. 1 part noir, 2 parts martial arts, and 3 parts don't ask questions. It was the ultimate proof of concept. Now, flash forward to 2026. The trades are whispering that the solo film is dead, and they're moving on to an ensemble pivot called Midnight Suns. But don't let the corporate spin fool you. This isn't just development hell. This is a case study in how the modern Hollywood machine can take a perfect, high-octane idea and have no one capable of pulling it out of the lot. We live in a world where Deadpool Wolverine just reminded everyone how much they crave a visceral, R-rated Daywalker. Wesley Snipes looked at the camera and said,
"There's only been one Blade. There's only ever going to be one Blade."
And instead of proving him wrong, Marvel is currently proving him right. Today, we aren't asking where the movie is. We're asking why Hollywood has lost the ability to execute on the simple stuff. Why can't this studio that conquered the world find a way to let a man hunt vampires in a leather jacket?
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
So after 6.5 years, we're finally getting the closest thing to confirmation we've ever gotten that Blade just isn't going to happen. That somehow Marvel cannot get their creative team to be able to understand how to write a script for something that's so simple.
Do you know how easy this is for me? Do you have any fucking idea how easy this is? This is a fucking joke. And I'm sorry you can't do this. I really am, because I wouldn't have to fucking sit here and watch you fumble around and fuck it up.
I think the most frustrating thing about this whole Blade debacle is that it has been like a slow moving train wreck. I don't think a single person in their right mind honestly believed Blade was still going to happen.
No.
It has been so clearly telegraphed that it was being either quietly canceled or just in some phase of development hell for years now. And instead of just actually having a conversation saying like, why is it so hard to make a Blade movie? A lot of people made a lot of excuses. A lot of people didn't want to acknowledge the fact that if it's this hard to make a Blade film, then there's probably something very wrong at Marvel.
Because that's the thing, Andy. It's not that it's hard to make a Blade film. It's that they're making it hard.
This has become the perfect example of how Disney, and especially Marvel Disney, can no longer just do the basic things anymore. Every single project that you would think is like an easy slam dunk or home run has to be overthought or recontextualized or subverted in some way that by the time it actually comes out, it's usually far too late, and just becomes this giant, like, messy spaghetti of ideas that were brought together by a committee of people who probably didn't want to work on the project in the first place.
Or didn't understand the character. It's how you get in films like The Marvels or Captain America Brave New World.
Yep. Where all the warning signs are always there, right? The constant reshoots, the repeated poor test screenings, but with
multiple different writers.
Yeah, the desperation to include it into the MCU. But with Blade, it's worse. Because with Blade, it never even got off the ground. Blade is the only project to have had 2 directors leave before they even started filming the project.
Holy fucking shit.
There are few other MCU characters that are as battle-tested as Blade. We know that he is a financial draw. We know that there's an audience for Blade. And as of Deadpool Wolverine, we know that there's a lot of love left for the 1990s Blade films.
Yeah, old man Blade.
And you, I was not expecting to see you here. Thought you were, retired.
Disney Marvel has done this with a lot of characters, and this is kind of a problem with Hollywood at large. But it's this issue where a very simple idea that should be a very straightforward value offered to the audience is well overcomplicated.
Yeah, they always want to add in stuff to be able to connect you to the next thing. I feel like they kept running into issues because it wasn't about Blade. They didn't want to focus just on Blade. It had to be a focus on who can we add in here to take on the mantle following Blade.
Yeah, it's this tradition, and a very unfortunate tradition at that Marvel stories have shifted into no longer being the exploration of a character, but using the character as just the next point in the assembly line.
Yeah, the stepping stone to the next thing.
And I think over the past couple of phases, as more and more characters have failed, there's been this desperation across all their properties, especially ones that they think might have a chance of being a home run, to use them to bolster failing characters that they've made up their minds that they need for the future of the MCU. So for context, this news comes out after the newest rumor that Blade will not be getting his own solo film, which, again, I think most people have known for quite a while.
Well, I think most people just assumed it was just never going to happen. That they would continue the continuous circulation of news of when are we getting the Blade film, that people are coming in and out, that we're getting new writers, new directors, but that eventually people would just stop asking for it.
Yeah, if we just keep delaying, because we don't want to cancel it, because canceling would look bad. But if we keep delaying, eventually people lose interest.
Because canceling means defeat, Andy.
Yeah, canceling means that Disney made a bad decision.
Yeah, that they failed.
That their strategy was wrong. Instead, they've just slow walked this thing, hoping that people would lose interest.
So to them, Andy, this isn't failing. If we get Midnight Suns, that's not a failure on Disney's part. It's a detour.
Which is another unfortunate pattern with Disney Marvel. When they can't nail down a character, they often try and shoehorn them into these collective projects.
Ensemble films.
These ensemble films. And the last phase of Marvel has really felt like a bunch of characters that on their own, they don't know what to do with, being grouped together, hoping that there's enough market overlap to make the film successful.
It's like this obsession with doing group films, like an Avengers style film or Guardians of the Galaxy style film. They do not have the creativity to just stand alone and focus on one specific character and their journey. They need to be able to focus on multiple people to divert your attention.
Yeah, I think it's also about lacking discipline. I think the early phases of the MCU were so good because each character was given their own time to be adapted and to build up an audience, but also a character, to build up a space in the MCU. But that takes time and that takes discipline, that takes effort. And this just feels like the era of cash grabs. Every project is about harvesting. There's no more sowing. And so they just don't seem to want to invest anything in characters. They're ready just to yield the rewards. But the thing is, they haven't done anything to earn the rewards for some of these characters.
And I feel like in order to understand how embarrassing this entire thing is, we have to remember where this all started. Because in 2019 at the San Diego Comic-Con, that was the huge announcement. That was the major shift when Mahershala Ali walks out and the crowd went wild. Because we were finally getting the introduction of a new person who was going to take over the mantle for Blade.
And I think that the excitement for Mahershala Ali is still there. I mean, the guy's a great actor. He looks like he could play the part of Blade.
He's a two-time Oscar winner. You were getting a quality actor.
I don't think there's any doubts about his ability to play Blade. And I think that's why this seems so stupid. Why is it so hard to put a great actor into a popular film and film it?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it should be that big of a deal. But from 2022 to 2024, there's just this merry-go-round of directors where, again, what you would think would be a very appealing IP to adapt instead just becomes this place of creative hell where nobody can succeed.
It wasn't just the merry-go-round of directors. It was the merry-go-round of writers. They had 5 different writers at separate times touching the script.
It's just an absolute meat grinder of creativity where people go in with ideas, nothing happens, and then they have to go take other projects. And so you just end up in this cycle of constantly having to restart.
I also feel like it's not stated enough how simple this project really is. Because when you have Blade, there's only certain core things that you need to be involved in. It's leather, it's techno, it's sword fighting, and then blood because he's a vampire and you're hunting vampires.
The checklist to make an amazing Blade film is actually very short. It's essentially a vibe film. As long as you nail down the vibe and the attitude and just
the aesthetic,
the general badassery of Blade, you're going to make most fans happy. And by the way, the first 3 Blade films are fun. They're not all great, but people had fun with them. But you don't need to overthink this. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of is the problem. The MCUification of all these Marvel things. Blade does not fit into the MCU mold. He needs to be in a rated R film It doesn't work in a PG-13 film where you're trying to throw in some of the Avengers, unless they're also going to do rated R stuff. But guess what? Disney runs the problem of that might hurt the brand. And that's kind of what's happened to the comic book industry and especially the MCU. All these characters are from different comics. They all had different tones. And they're striving to have just one tone, one product, the MCU.
Well, to have one method.
Yeah. There's no room for the edginess of Blade. And the characters that now they're looking to lump him in with are also kind of the creative misfits. Werewolf by Night, Moon Knight, characters that there may have been a creative spark of, oh, we should adapt this character, but not really knowing, like, how do any of these characters fit into the MCU?
Yeah. Which is where you ran into multiple issues with the scripts, because it was rumored that one of them was female-led and that it was going to be multiple females, and then Blade was going to end up being a side character in his own film. And then another one was a period piece version that was closer to Sinners. And so they had to go away from that.
Well, and that's the absurdity, right? The rumor is that the costumes that were developed for the period piece Blade film were written off and used by Sinners, and Sinners was a very popular film. So a completely separate vampire film succeeded wearing,
and they didn't have Blade.
Wearing the skin, wearing the costumes of the Blade film on just one of the ideas that they didn't know what to do with, that they couldn't follow through with.
Yeah.
I think this whole situation just speaks to the absurdity of constantly trying to hit the 4 quadrants instead of just making a popular film. You're always going to run into problems pleasing all 4 quadrants when you're trying to make an R-rated horror flick. And we talk about this all the time. Disney and Marvel are constantly sanding down edges. But the edges are what make Blade amazing.
It's necessary for the character.
His name's Blade, dude. If you sand it down, it becomes dull. His name's Blade. He should
Not
be sharp
dull.
and pointy and dangerous. He shouldn't be soft and cuddly and safe. And of course, there's the elephant in the room. In Deadpool Wolverine, when Wesley Snipes comes out as Blade and says,
Bro,
There's only been one Blade. There's only ever going to be one Blade.
at the time it seemed like a joke, but I think the reason that line hit so hard is we all knew it wasn't a joke. It was speaking to a bigger problem at Disney and Marvel.
it was addressing the audacity that they haven't been able to make a Blade film yet.
Yeah. And so Wesley Snipes, a actor who was notoriously difficult to deal with. I mean, they had to CGI his eyes open because one day the man said he just was not going to open his eyes on a take. Don't know why, don't know the full story.
He refused.
But he refused. That guy was able to get 3 Blade films made, while consummate professional Mahershala Ali, 2-time Academy Award winner, can't get one.
What the fuck is this world?
Maybe you have to exemplify the edges of Blade to get a Blade film made. Perhaps Mahershala Ali is just too nice, and you need a little bit of a diva like Wesley Snipes to make shit work.
Now, some people might try and argue that the reason they haven't made the Blade film yet is because there's just too much respect at Marvel for Blade, and they want to do it right, you guys. It needs to be perfect.
Oh, don't give me that liberal bullshit.
So because they want it to be so perfect, that's why they haven't made it yet.
I don't believe that at all.
And I think that's bullshit.
If it was just about respect for the character, I think at this point they would have stripped it down to its core and do the things that have made every Blade film successful. It's the techno, it's the blood, it's the vampires, it's the fighting. Instead, every rumor that's come out is about how they can distance it from Blade. And it all kind of sounds like the same MCU springboard bullshit, where every character has to launch a spin-off character or several spin-off characters.
Or just untalented writers who cannot focus on one storyline.
And you could almost say that it's Disney that are the bloodsuckers.
It almost feels like Hollywood, but especially Marvel, are afraid of dark and gritty.
Yeah, there seems to be a huge cultural friction in Hollywood because at a time when I would say probably the only thing that's doing especially well, that reliably does well in theaters, are horror films. They're the one film that seems to always make financial sense. Look at Blumhouse and A24 are having huge success with horror films, and Marvel has a film that actually could fit in and be a horror success.
Yeah, that could compete in that genre.
And they just won't.
Yeah.
They want to turn it into an MCU project, when I think we can all acknowledge that the era of the superhero film is definitely waning, and it would probably be the smartest pivot to gear it more towards the horror fan or just the long-standing Blade fan than the MCU fan. There is a thing called the cultural industry theory, this idea that corporate standardization kills the aura or the vibe of transgressive characters. And that's the thing. It's very hard to build brands around rough around the edges characters if you're not happy building a rough around the edges brand. And so it just seems that repeatedly there is a softening of characters to fit a more corporate mold, and they end up feeling kind of like the HR version of the characters you love.
They're making homogenized versions. They're all kind of the same. They're all in the same vein. It's not like you have standout characters have specific characteristics so that they're all different. It seems like Hollywood wants to just transition to that. The current culture prioritizes brand safety. So they're all the same. They're easy to write because there's a method for you to use.
Yeah, there's a brand guideline.
Yeah.
And all characters must fit in that brand guideline. The end result is it kind of feels like you have a really funny friend in the office, but he says something that gets him in trouble. And then you see him when he comes back from HR and he's just afraid to talk. Yeah. And you're like, where's my boy? Look at how they've massacred my boy. Where's his soul? Where's his aura? Where's the edge? And he's like,
where's his special thing?
But it's like he's on his third strike. And so there will be no more jokes.
So yeah, it just feels like Blade is too out there for them. He has too much riz and they can't take that risk.
Yeah. And so I think they're in this no man's land where they can't ignore the historic success of Blade. Blade pretty much saved Marvel in the 90s.
He honestly was the first Black superhero.
Yeah, we don't talk about that, but he was. And yet they just don't know what to do with him. He doesn't fit what Marvel's trying to do.
He doesn't fit their mold.
And so he's too famous to just ignore. There's too loud of a fan base to wait for people to forget about him. But he will probably never fit the current trajectory of the MCU.
So sadly, it just seems like he's now going to be shoehorned into a group project.
But what do you think? What director would you bring in to try and just cure this situation and bang out an amazing Blade script? Because I don't think it's that hard. I think it's pretty much John Wick, but with Blade and vampires and a lot more blood, and you've got a hit.